It wasn't that long ago in basketball history when big threes were all the rage. The Celtics won a title in 2008 with the trio of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett. The Miami Heatles didn't win 8 championships like LeBron promised, but they did manage to repeat in 2012 and 2013. And of course, those Spurs teams with Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and Manu Ginobili were pretty dominant as well. While the big three era of the NBA has kind of aged out in recent years, I am pleased to report that we officially have a big three in college basketball, courtesy of the Creighton Bluejays. Thanks to its trio of Trey Alexander, Baylor Scheierman, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, you can make the case that Creighton is in the midst of its best season ever. Currently ranked in the top 10 of the AP poll, the Blue Jays have set themselves up to earn a very high seed in the NCAA tournament, and have looked the part of a legitimate national championship contender with high-profile wins over the likes of Alabama, UConn, and Marquette. What makes Creighton unique, though, is that big three. While I'm sure you can make the case that every team technically has a big three of some sort, Creighton has taken that concept to the extreme. A whopping 66% of Creighton's points come from one of Alexander, Scheierman, or Kalkbrenner, and as a matter of fact, the Blue Jays are the only team in Division I to have 3 guys average more than 17 points a game, and the first one since 2018. While this trio is obviously extremely talented, what sets them apart is that they are so heavily relied upon compared to other teams. Creighton isn't particularly deep, as they can really only reliably play 6 or 7 guys on a nightly basis, so it becomes imperative for Alexander, Scheierman, and Kalkbrenner to play like stars in every game, especially as we get closer to the postseason. So let's learn more about Creighton's big three and see why they are built for the NCAA tournament. Part of what makes Creighton's big three so effective is the total diversity of skill among them. In Trey Alexander, you have a primary on-ball scorer who can get a good look at all 3 levels. In Baylor Scheierman, you have a lights-out perimeter shooter who is also a monster on the glass and an underrated offensive creator. And in Ryan Kalkbrenner, you have one of the best lob threats and rim protectors in the country. Because there's no real redundancy among Creighton's best 3 players, it allows them to beat opponents in a variety of ways, despite not having that much depth. When it comes to Trey Alexander, he's become one of the most reliable scorers in the country thanks to his ability to create separation and remain collected on shot attempts. A 6'4" combo guard from Oklahoma City, Alexander averages around 17.5 points and 5 assists per game on 54% true shooting, and he's the guy Creighton turns to when they need a bucket. He's not some one-of-a-kind athlete, but because of how good he is when it comes to ball handling and controlling pace, he's able to get open looks at the drop of a hat, whether it be stopping on a dime and hitting mid-range jumpers, or catching defenses off balance with floaters and runners. Per synergy, Alexander connects on a blistering 52% of his mid-range dribble jumpers, and because of this, Creighton never really gets stuck offensively. If they can't get a shot at the rim or an open 3, they can just give it to Trey and let him go to work, as he shows great comfort in getting to his shots at different launch angles, which makes these attempts borderline unguardable. Here, Creighton is tied with Villanova at the end of the game and seems to be lost offensively, but Trey Alexander comes to the rescue and hits this crazy one-footed shot to win the game. While Alexander only shoots 32% from 3, he's not someone you can just leave wide open out there either, as he's hit close to 36% of his catch and shoot opportunities on the season, and has a general willingness to fire from distance. He also leads Creighton in assists this year at 5 per game, and this is with spending a majority of his minutes off the ball. Despite this though, Alexander is a very solid pick and roll creator, and he just does an awesome job of staying in control. He posts an assist to turnover ratio of just over 2, and this number is due to his ability to deliberately dissect defensive coverages and remain patient with the ball. He's gotten much better at reading and reacting in these settings compared to his first 2 seasons at Creighton, and when paired with his always reliable shot making, his passing gives defenses yet another thing to worry about when guarding him. Watch here how Alexander will drive hard to the right, stop on a dime to let 2 Nebraska defenders fly by him, and then find Ryan Kalkbrenner for an easy dunk. With how awesome he's been as an offensive player though, it's easy to forget just how good he is as a perimeter defender. At 6'4" with solid length, Alexander is a pesky on-ball stopper with great lateral mobility who can stay in front of opposing ball handlers thanks to his balance and strength. He leads Creighton in steals this year, and he actually has 15 blocks on the year too, which is impressive for someone his size. Watch here how Alexander will deal with the initial contact from Kadari Richmond and block him not once, but twice before Richmond gets a lucky tip. While Alexander's shot creation is perhaps Creighton's most robust form of offense, it's actually 5th-year senior Baylor Scheierman who leads the Blue Jays in scoring at around 19 points per game. After 3 seasons at South Dakota State where he won Summit League Player of the Year in 2022, Scheierman took last year to get fully adjusted to high major basketball and has absolutely exploded in year 2 at Creighton, re-establishing himself as one of the best wings in America in the process thanks to an incredibly versatile offensive game that allows him to thrive in a variety of roles. Where Scheierman first stands out is his shooting. He hits close to 38% of his threes on around 8 attempts per game, and he can get these looks in several different situations. He can flash on the perimeter and hit threes off the catch, he's elite at using screens to get open for shots both on and off the ball, and he's also always looking to beat the defense down the floor and fire in transition. In addition to his overall shooting versatility though, his range is also insanely dangerous for opponents. Scheierman has no fear when it comes to shooting, and he'll absolutely launch whenever he feels open. Here, Scheierman is barely in frame when he catches this ball, but that still doesn't stop him from setting up and nailing a deep three-pointer. His shooting ability also opens up his driving game. Scheierman isn't someone who can beat defenders off the dribble from a standstill, but he's really good at moving without the ball and using the defender's momentum against him. Scheierman gets himself open off of screens really well, as he can either flare out for open threes or curl off them with intensity for looks at the rim, where he finishes at a solid 64% clip. Here, Scheierman will curl off of a double pin down and watch how he throws the ball forward to get a leg up on his defender before ultimately finishing with a nice righty layup. Adding to his already well-rounded offensive game, Scheierman is also a very intelligent passer, as his 4 assists per game is third on the team behind Alexander and Stephen Ashworth, and he gets these in rather unique ways considering he's not a primary ball handler. For one thing, Scheierman is awesome at making quick decisions on the catch and on the move. He has a really good idea of where the ball should go before he receives the pass, and this catches defenses off guard as a lot of his assists look like the lead up to his shot. This is a similar action to the one we just saw Scheierman score off of, but instead here he recognizes that the defense collapses on him and finds Mason Miller on the opposite side, who knocks down an open three. Scheierman's passing is also put on display though because of his rebounding, and while that may seem somewhat unrelated at first glance, you see what I mean when he secures boards, as he immediately is looking to start the fast break the second he brings down an opponent's miss, and this leads to easy buckets in transition, whether it be a full court pass for a layup or a well-orchestrated rip and run. Scheierman also averages close to 9 rebounds a game, which leads the team, so these opportunities come around a little more than you'd initially expect. Watch here how Scheierman will grab the loose ball, lead the break in transition, and then look off the low defender, which allows him to pass to Mason Miller, who knocks down an open three. Rounding out Creighton's big three is Ryan Kalkbrenner. A 7'1" senior from St. Louis, Kalkbrenner has consistently been one of the best big men in the country over the course of his career, primarily due to his defensive dominance in the paint. This year, Kalkbrenner has been on a different level though, as he's swatting an absurd 3 shots a game, which is second nationally, to go along with a block rate of around 7.5%. Leading a top 30 defense in the country, Kalkbrenner is so effective on this end because of his elite length and commitment to scheme. Creighton typically employs a very deep drop coverage and ball screen scenarios, and this allows Kalkbrenner to anchor the paint and contest shots at the rim without having to worry too much about covering in space. That being said though, Kalkbrenner is able to stay in front of smaller guards when he's put in these positions, as he's good at remaining centered and letting his natural length do most of the work for him. Here, Kalkbrenner will initially shut down any shot attempt that could happen on the drive before being put on an island where he holds his own in space and ultimately contests the shot for a miss. Offensively, Kalkbrenner does what you'd expect a 7-footer to do. He's a great lob threat and play finisher for Creighton's guards, and he's also become a very reliable post-up scorer as well, as he's averaging an awesome 1.261 points per possession in these situations per synergy, and shows a real touch and finesse on some of his finishes. In addition to that, Kalkbrenner is really good at running the floor in transition, and of course, that makes life much easier for guys who start the break like Baylor Scheierman. Watch here how Kalkbrenner literally beats everybody down the floor, and Scheierman of course finds him for an easy layup. With this big three of Trey Alexander, Baylor Scheierman, and Ryan Kalkbrenner, Creighton has a shot to win any game they're in, and the diversified scoring combined with the natural fit of this trio makes it one of the most well-oiled units in college basketball. Creighton has one of the best offenses in the country with an effective field goal percentage of 58%, ranking 3rd nationally, and this is due in large part to the big three, as each of them play over 33 minutes a game. But even with Creighton's big three, you still need guys other than your stars to step up in certain moments. I mean, the Boston Celtics had Rajon Rondo, the Miami Heat had Mario Chalmers, and the Spurs had Kawhi Leonard. And while Creighton's options are perhaps more limited than you'd like, they do have players like Stephen Ashworth, who averages around 10 points a game as the team's starting point guard, and guys like Mason Miller and Francisco Farabello, who can both knock down perimeter shots consistently. And if the Bluejays do end up making a huge run in the tournament, odds are it'll be one of those guys who has a big game along the way. But still, make no mistake, Creighton is in this position because of their big three. The level to which they've been relied upon this season is near unprecedented in college basketball, and the level to which they've delivered is even more rare. All three of Alexander, Scheierman, and Kalkbrenner were top 10 finalists in their respective position awards, and Creighton was one of only 4 schools to earn that distinction with the others being North Carolina, Kansas, and UConn, which last I checked is pretty impressive company. And while there are issues with Creighton, they tend to play down to their competition, they don't force a ton of turnovers, and they don't really get to the free throw line a whole lot. At the end of the day, it's hard to argue against true star power in college basketball, and Creighton certainly has plenty of that. Thanks so much for watching, and give me your thoughts below.